Basically, monetary policy is policy announced by the central bank generally, right? Central bank of any country. In the Indian context, is Reserve Bank of India, uh, but it's a general rule. In the context of India prior to 2016, Reserve Bank of India was the only custodian of monetary policy. But after 2015, it's Monetary Policy Committee. So when all these changes were announced in 2015, actually in 2015 there was an agreement between Government of India and Monetary and this Reserve Bank of India, right? And this agreement was basically nothing but monetary policy framework. And as per this agreement, a monetary policy committee was set up, and this committee was responsible for monetary policy first. Unlike prior to this 2015, it was Reserve Bank of India, only and only Reserve Bank of India was the custodian of monetary policy, and it was basically not the Reserve Bank of India, but it was only and only Reserve Bank of India governor, right? That is, he was a de facto custodian of the monetary policy. But after 2015, after this signing of this agreement between Government of India and RBI, now Monetary Policy Committee is responsible for monetary policy. First thing. Secondly, prior to 2015, I don't know whether you can recall or not that Reserve Bank of India, the target of the Reserve Bank of India is said to be supply of money in India, right? Secondly, supply of money means liquidity. Liquidity means inflation, right? But prior to 2015, there were n number of issues which were going in parallel to the inflation. For example, if the growth was down, then if government asked Reserve Bank of India, okay, uh, forget about inflation, focus on the growth. Then, despite inflationary trend, Reserve Bank of India come up with such policy which fuels the growth in the economy. Fuels the growth in the economy means they have to infuse more liquidity into the market, despite the fact that it was inflationary trend, right? But after this 2015 agreement, as per this agreement, RBI was asked by the government, or more specifically, Monetary Policy Committee was asked by the government that now onwards, RBI will be having a single most target, and that target will be inflation control. And the target will be inflation control, and the technical term was given to it, inflation targeting. Inflation targeting. So the single most objective right now to the Reserve Bank of India is inflation targeting. If questions comes in anywhere, if you find what is the objective of RBI right now, so if there is a single option of inflation targeting, then it is the correct option in the present scenario. We'll discuss in detail what is inflation targeting and what are the different contours of this inflation targeting. But right now, only try to understand that after 2016, the single most objective of the Reserve Bank of India to control inflation, that is inflation targeting. First thing. Uh, do you know the relationship between infusion of liquidity in the market, growth, inflation? Are you clear with this concept? How they are the interplay between inflation, growth, money supply, and exchange rate? Do you have any idea? Okay, tell me who haven't this idea, the relationship between growth, inflation, how this is working. Actually, please use the audio because there is an issue with regard all these terms as infusion, recapitalization, same. Can you please explain? Okay. See, what happens, for example, is the slide visible to you? Speak because if I am again going to chat, then is it visible now? Slide.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Am I audible or not?
Audible, sir.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir, you're audible.
Why nobody is responding? Am I audible?
Yes, sir. You are audible.
Yes, sir.
Wait. Sorry, my I was on mute. I am audible now.
Yes, sir, you are.
Sir.
Yes, sir.
Actually, my laptop was having mute. Okay, now see, growth is basically what happens that, uh, for example, growth means if you talk about growth, then you mean to say that we are having GDP growth, correct? When GDP growth is taking place, that means that it is resulting into investments, right? When you are doing investment, because if you take this more GDP growth, that means government is having more money, government fiscal status is good. When the government is having good fiscal status, that means government is investing. When government is investing, what it means that it is hiring private sector. Hiring of the private sector means private sector is again investing. Now investment means that you are coming up with the factories, you are coming up with the industries, you are coming up with the infrastructure projects, highways, metro and all those things, gas pipelines, power projects. That means you are hiring the people, that means jobs. When you are creating more and more jobs, that means these people are creating demand, or demand in the economy, or they are paying more taxes. When they are more paying more tax and all these things, that means ultimately what's happening, the growth is taking place, that is GDP growth. Now this all is being fueled by this investment. This is the center point. I started it with this GDP growth, but I have to start it with investment, right? If you can recall Harold Domar model, when we were discussing the planning, it was saying that growth is directly proportional to GDP. Growth is directly proportional to investment. So if I'm increasing the investment, that is ultimately it is leading to GDP growth. First thing. Now see, when this investment is increasing, and these things are, here is a term demand. This demand is nothing, when you want to understand this demand in inflationary trend, demand is nothing but inflation, right? Keep it in your mind. The demand is nothing but inflation. Right? Now, if it is continuing, if the cycle is continuing, that means demand can go out of control. Demand can go so much of out of control that the supply, there will be a mismatch of supply and demand. Supply will be mismatched with the demand. That means huge inflationary trend will be there. Huge inflationary trend will be there, right? Then here the role is of the Reserve Bank of India, or liquidity in the economy. Investment is coming from financial intermediaries, that is through the banks. If this investment is or if an individual or an investor is having cheap money in the sense that at a cheaper rates, right, then naturally he will borrow more and more, and he will do investment in the economy. If more and more investments are going on and on and on, that means they are creating so much of demand in the economy that there is supply mismatch. That means it becomes inflation. That means at this point of time, RBI has to intervene and says that I have to put certain checks so that the borrowing becomes costlier. If this inflation is increasing at this point of time, then RBI will come at this point of time and will say that I will come up with the policy so that people borrow less money from the banks. This is how relationship between this growth and inflation works, right? So what was happening in the past in 2015, if you can recall the times of UPA, inflation was across the board. Food inflation was in double digits, and even the headline inflation. Don't confuse with headline inflation. Headline inflation is nothing but the total inflation which you see in the newspapers. So we'll discuss it in inflation in detail. So inflation was there, and the government was also struggling with growth, right? Because at the fag end of 2014, government had started struggling for this growth. Now, at that point of time, prior to 2015, what the government did, government informally asked the Reserve Bank of India, look, we are facing growth issue and don't worry about inflation. Please infuse liquidity into the market. RBI has no option because the governor of the RBI is the government appointee. He's directly reporting to the, not directly though it is independent, but in Indian scenario, you can better understand that if you see the tenure of Urjit Patel and the incumbent governor Saktinath Dasa, you can see how these people are looking towards the government, right? So prior to 2015, what was happening? The Reserve Bank of India were announcing monetary policy in consonance or in demand, in concurrence with the government of India, despite the fact that there were inflationary trend in the economy, first thing. But after 2015, government said to Reserve Bank of India that look, now you have to control only and only the inflation, first thing. Secondly, government of India said to this Reserve Bank of India that if there are certain exceptional times which demand infusion of liquidity despite inflationary trend, then we will give you in writing. Until and unless we are giving you something in writing, you are not supposed to follow any instruction from the government of India. We will be giving you everything in writing if we need certain exceptional steps from your side. So as of now, the status is Reserve Bank of India is following inflation targeting framework, and the single most objective of RBI is price stability, that is uh, inflation control, right? Second thing, not only this is you understood the growth and inflation. Right? Second, the third most important before this Reserve Bank of India is exchange rate. How exchange rate? Because if you see, if there is high inflation in the economy, right, that means the other interpretation of the inflation is the value of your rupee is going down, right? That means you cannot allow rupee neither to overvalued nor undervalued. It should be within certain framework, within certain thresholds, right? It should not breach those thresholds, right? So might be a possibility if there is huge inflation in the market, right? That means your rupee is getting depreciated. The value of your rupee is getting down, right? That means when your rupee, the value of the rupee is getting down, that means though it will be beneficial for exports, but right? This we will discuss when we will discussing the trade, that how what is depreciation, what is devaluation. Just you have to understand that if the value of the rupee is getting down, it is depreciation or devaluation, and when there are inflationary trades, then the value of rupee goes down, right? Now that means RBI has to maintain a balance between inflation and the value of the rupee, right? So this is basically the maintaining of this balance between growth, inflation, and exchange rate. It is very tough. It's not so easy that you are seeing this PPT and this is simple economy. No, it's very tough to maintain a balance between growth, inflation, and exchange rate, and that's why it is said to be trilemma of RBI. Trilemma of RBI, right? This is Monetary Policy Committee. The Reserve Bank of India governor is a de facto chairman of this committee, and there are 6 people in this committee. 3 are Government of India nominated, and 3 people are from Reserve Bank of India. And RBI is the chairperson, right? And the decision of Monetary Policy Committee are based upon consensus. Now, can you tell me uh, what do you observe, what are the changes after this adoption of Monetary Policy Committee regime in comparison to the regime of monetary policy announced by Reserve Bank of India prior to 2015 and after 2015? What do you find, what positive do you find with this idea of Monetary Policy Committee, or any negative you observed with this monetary policy committee? Any idea? Better to use audio one by one because it takes time. Anybody? See, if you see this framework, monetary policy committee framework, you observe that prior to it, whatever the monetary policy was being announced, it was the domain of Reserve Bank of India only. That means it was less of a consensus. Whatever suits Reserve Bank of India, it was put before the people first thing. Now, if you see the newspapers, whenever, secondly, this monetary policy is announced bi-monthly. Prior, it was quarterly. So whenever this monetary policy is being announced, right, it is very with fanfare. In the newspapers, you will find 1 week before this announcement of the monetary policy, other newspapers are discussing that what will be the stance of the Reserve Bank of India or Monetary Policy Committee. After this 2016 framework, everything is in the public domain, right? So if you see this time monetary policy announcement was delayed because one of the government nominated member, his tenure was over, and I think the position was vacant, and the committee waited for the sixth person to join. Then only monetary policy was announced. That means after this monetary policy committee, first transparency has arrived in the announcement of the monetary policy. Secondly, it is more of a consensus based. Third, accountability has increased because initially what was happening, it was only the RBI governor, right? Now he can be questioned by the government nominated people, right? So the final outcome between these RBI and the government nominated people is based upon consensus, and it is more having more acceptance among the government as well as the RBI, because these people are coming after a lot of brainstorming, after a lot of discussions, deliberations. That means the final outcome of this monetary policy committee is more acceptable and more reliable in comparison to 2015 regime, right? So this is how the monetary policy committee regime is existing right now. Right? Then coming to types of monetary policy, I have basically these are two parameters. Normal, you will find this expansionary and contractionary in normal books, but I have also taken this unconventional and conventional. Conventional monetary policy, as I discussed yesterday, it is nothing but the monetary policy during the normal circumstances, the normal times, right? So policy adopted by uh, uh, the central bank during the normal times is basically conventional, and unconventional is basically during the time of exceptional times, like recession of 2008, like pandemic. So if you see, I don't know whether you recall or not, that during 2008 times there were certain popular terms. I'll discuss them later on in this class itself. Negative interest regime, right? These were some very popular terms which were popularized during the time of after 2008 recession. And if you see this time, even in India, you might have heard the term helicopter money. Even if, I think Telangana CM was very much peculiar about this helicopter money concept. Right? Secondly, if you talk about this, besides this helicopter money, you will find the RBI announcement of LTRO, long-term repo operations, right? So all these monetary policy announcements are basically to deal with exceptional circumstances. And that's why such policies which are dealing with exceptional times are said to be unconventional. That means such monetary policies are not conventional, they are unconventional. Coming to expansionary and contractionary monetary policy. See, one thing you have to understand the difference how UPSC is asking the question, right? UPSC can ask you the question that what is the characteristic of the expansionary monetary policy. They will give you a situation that this is the situation, and can ask you that whether it is expansionary, contractionary. They can give you a number of options. Secondly, they twist with the words. They will give you a situation that this is the situation, and that situation might be contractionary situation. That means there will be no liquidity in the market. Then they will ask you that what can be the antidote or solution to the situation, right? So the situation will be opposite to the expansionary. If they are asking for the solution, then the solution will be opposite to the situation given in the question. So please, whenever you are going through the questions related to this monetary policy or inflationary questions in UPSC, first go word by word to the questions, right? Because they can ask you the question in any manner. Either they can ask you that what it is, or they can ask you the solution to the problem, right? So the answer in both the cases will be absolutely different, right? So again, I am telling you, whenever you are doing the questions of UPSC, don't do like this. You see the starting of the question, okay, I know this question, and you just tick mark. Yeah, don't do that, right? Coming to the expansionary monetary policy, expansionary, again go by word expansion. And monetary policy, I already told you, monetary policy is about liquidity. So expansionary monetary policy, that means expansionary monetary policy will be expansion of the liquidity, nothing else. Expansion of the liquidity. That means you have to expand the money in the economy. That's it. So expansionary is increases the total supply of money, that is liquidity, more rapidly than usual. Clear? Now this situation of expansionary monetary policy, what will be its implication? Expansionary monetary policy will be in place when there will be less liquidity, right? When there will be no growth, right? So now see the question can either be, they can give you that this is the situation, there is less liquidity in the economy, there is no growth in the economy, right? There is this, and then they can ask you what is the solution to this, right? That means this expansionary is antidote to this. Or they can ask you that the monetary policy announced by the RBI is about increasing the total supply of money. Then what it is, right? So it depends upon the question. Again, contractionary means you have to reduce the liquidity, contract, right? Reduce liquidity. That means, for example, liquidity means the availability of the money to the investor or to the people. If, for example, you have to deal with the bank, ultimately it's the bank to whom you are dealing with, the RBI is dealing with. So if, for example, rate of interest of loans is, for example, 8% right now, if you are getting loans at 8%, then contractionary means RBI will come up with such policy that this rate of interest becomes 9 or 10%. Then only you will be demotivated to have the loan from the bank, right? If you do it 7%, that means you want to infuse more liquidity into the market, that is expansionary. If you are doing 8 to 9, that means you want to restrict the supply of money into the economy, or the pace of infusing of the liquidity will be comparatively lesser in comparison to situation this. So this is the difference between expansionary and contractionary. Now, yesterday I told you about tools of monetary policy. I told that first is how much money is to be infused in the economy, the volume. So if the tool of the RBI is dealing with total amount or the volume of credit into the economy, that is quantitative tool. And if the policy is related to where this money is to go, that is qualitative, the quality of the liquidity in the economy, where this liquidity is supposed to go. This quantitative we will be doing in detail. Most of the questions are coming on this analytical and everything. Qualitative, you can find questions, you should know qualitative tools, but less questions are coming from this. And if the question is coming on qualitative tool, it is direct, right? So it is basically defining where that money will go. And the best example to understand is that whenever RBI is announcing any policy, from time to time, you will find that the RBI is governor advises the banks that please give more loans either to agricultural sector, to the microfinance institutions, to MSMEs, right? So such advices by the Reserve Bank of India to the banks is basically a moral persuasion. Reminded, it is not binding on any bank. It's only moral advice, moral guidance, moral persuasion, and that is moral suasion. Technically, it is said to be moral suasion. So any guideline, any request, advice, guidance from the Reserve Bank of India to the banks, to the financial system is referred to as moral suasion. Secondly, rationing of credit. Can anybody give the example of rationing of credit in the recent past? A very big reform by Government of India in which rationing of credit was done.
Sir,
Huh?
sir, under Atmanirbhar Bharat, the MSME sectors were given more preference in banks by giving them loans or at less interest. So that is
Right.
rationing of credit.
Rationing of credit, that's also right, but more specific. That is basically which you are talking about is more of a qualitative in the sense that it's also rationing. Uh, the best example is, can you recall the demonetization? What were the guidelines of the government or the Reserve Bank of India that everybody will be given only 2000 rupees, right? Everybody will be given 2000 rupees, right? So yes, this MSME, that means you are giving monies to the specific sectors, or it was announced that everybody will be given this sort of amount, that is 2000 rupees. That means I think you all are aware about this PDS system, ration, right? If I am not wrong, everybody might be knowing that ration shops, PDS
Yes,
system.
sir.
It is the same. That what government does in rations, that it is defined that everybody below the poverty line will be getting this amount of grains, this amount of rice, this amount of oil, and all those. So in a similar manner, if the government is saying that every individual will be given such amount of money, that is rationing. Margin requirements, the best example is if you are having any exposure, when your parents talk to your parents, they will tell you better that when your parents are looking for loans, right? So if they are planning for home loan, so if they are planning for 1 crore if they are planning for a house for 1 crore, and he approaches bank, then the bank does not give 1 crore in the form of loan, right? Bank does not give 100% 100% loan. Rather, bank gives around 80%, 70 to 80% in the form of loans, and 20% is to be arranged by you. That is basically margin requirement. This 20% or 30% is the margin which is required by the individual. What is the reason of this margin requirement? Anybody? What is the reason why bank prefers to have this margin requirement? Any idea? Any idea why the government is or why the bank is looking for margin requirement from your side?
No, sir. No, no idea.
What happens that bank wants to know your seriousness, first thing. Secondly, if the whole capital is being provided by the bank, then they will, because nothing will be at the stack. You are not investing a single rupee. You are playing with the money of the bank. So there is no motivational factor before you, and there will be high probability that you can wash off that money, right? You can convert that money into non-performing asset. So that's why bank wants seriousness from your side, or they want to ensure that the investor is the real investor. When your money is also at stake, then only there will be seriousness, right? If your money is not at stake, then why you will be interested in carrying out? You will be like, okay, if it works out, then it's okay. If it doesn't works out, what matters to there is no effect on me, because I am having 0% stake in this investment. If you are having 20 lakhs of your investment in that particular property or in that particular business, then definitely you will be serious, because your 20 lakhs are at stake, right? So there's a reason why bank have this provision of margin requirements. Now the core thing starts from here. There are three tools: open market operation, variable reserve ratio, and interest rates. One thing you have to keep in your mind, that for example, when you are going to the bank and looking for loans, right? You purchase a house of 1 crore, you went to the bank. It's not like that bank is giving you 80 lakh rupees without having any mortgage. The papers of this house are with the bank. This is mortgage. That means it is only the exchange of the things. You give the papers of house or property to the bank. In lieu of that, in exchange of that, bank gave you 80 lakh rupees. First thing. Now I say that when this is being replaced by financial institution, or now I say, if government of India wants to take loan from the bank, or bank wants to take loan from Reserve Bank of India, or bank wants to take loan from bank, another bank, then is there any arrangement which is being exchanged between these entities? Because these are not individuals, these are financial institutions. Yes, every borrowing takes place in lieu of something, in lieu of some instrument, and that instrument which is being exchanged in all these transactions is basically government security. Government security, most popularly known as GSEC. In many countries, it is said to be ZILT, right? In many countries, it is also said to be actuary market. Please Google all these terms, because UPSC asks many times asked direct questions. Like once GSEC was asked, right? Actuary market, right? Treasury bills, T bills, right? And most popularly, they are said to be government securities in the context of India. Government bond. There are n number of nomenclature to this. Now understand this how it works. Open market operation. Open market operation is nothing. It's basically purchase and sale of government securities. Right now, how it works? It is basically what I tell you, that all these tools are about infusion of liquidity in the market, either infusing the liquidity or absorbing the liquidity, right? Either or. So open market operation, if the government or the Reserve Bank of India is trying to control liquidity through the sale and purchase of government securities, then it is open market operation. Now how it works? For example, I already told you that either there is exchange of assets. There is exchange of assets. That means whenever government will adopt this OM securities. So now see one example. The government wants to sell government security. That means this is government, this is bank. The government is giving government security to the bank, selling. Sale mein it will be giving government security to bank. In lieu of this government security, what the government of India will get in return? Anybody? If it is selling government security in the market, what it will get in exchange of that government security?
Amount.
Anybody? Sorry?
Government will get amounts. Money. Money supply decreases in
Very
market.
good, very good. The bank, the government of India will absorb, will take away money from the banks. I told you, whenever there is any give and take, right? Everything is mutual. It is giving government security and taking currency back. It's not like that, that it will only be giving the government security and not taking the cash. So whenever there is exchange of asset, there is always exchange of asset in the economy. Remind it. There will always be exchange of assets in the economy, and in lieu of that exchange cash, right? Understand that this is very important, right? Now see, if there is a recession in the economy, there is recession in the economy. Now government has to control, or Reserve Bank of the government has asked central bank, look, I want to control the recession, and I want to control it through open market operation. Open market operation means that you have to deal or exchange only the government security. That means the Reserve Bank of India has to infuse liquidity in the market. Recession, to control the recession, that means you want to infuse the liquidity. Then I said that means central bank has to give money. When it has to give money to the banks, in exchange, what banks will give to the central bank? They will give government securities. This is how it works, right? When money will be infused in the economy, then definitely there will be high money supply. When there will be high money supply, that means money will be available at cheaper rates to the people. That means low interest rate. Anybody to whom it is not clear, feel free to ask, because in the coming slides these things will become more complex.
It is clear, sir.
Yeah, right. Now the situation is that you want to control the inflation. Control inflation means there is huge liquidity in the economy and you want to absorb that liquidity. That means the government or the Central Bank of India has to put out the liquidity. You have to take out liquidity, rupee, right? Liquidity. When you are taking out the liquidity, that means what you have to give in exchange. You have to sell. Technically, you are saying the government of India or the central bank has to sell the government security to the banks, right? So when government security will be infused in the system, it will take away liquidity from the market or the banks. That means less liquidity, less money supply will be there. And when less money supply will be there, that means higher interest rate will prevail, right? Higher interest rates will prevail. So this is how open market operation are controlling the recession and inflation, right? So first thing you have to understand that in case of open market operation, the key word is there is purchase and sale of government securities. That's it. That is open market operation. You have to deal with sale and purchase of government security. This is basically open market operation. Now next comes, prior to understanding the other tools, we have to understand this concept, NDTL. Uh, NDTL is basically, it will be used because in the coming slides, this NDTL is important because all the ratios are taking NDTL as the base. Everything is in with respect to this NDTL, right? So if you talk about, I have already discussed with you the concept of asset and liability. So if here we are referring to the total liabilities of the bank, total liabilities of the bank, because total liability of the bank means the bank is having so much of deposits with it, right? So there are two type of liabilities, demand liability and time liability. Demand liability is nothing but, for example, if you are depositing money in your saving account, right? For example, you are having 5 lakhs of money in your saving account, then this 5 lakh of money is available every time to you, right? So if you see, uh, in the age of ATM, it is available 24/7, or you can transfer it online at any point of time. So this is demand liability. That means this liability is available on demand to the owner of this to the owner of this asset, right? Second liability is, for example, you did fixed deposit. You did fixed deposit of 5 lakhs for 5 years. Bank knows that this liability, you can only demand this 5 lakhs after 5 years, after a fixed interval of time. That means this liability is after a particular point of time. So these, if you talk about total liabilities on the bank, total liabilities will be demand liability plus time liability, first thing. Now, for example, if you deposit 5 lakhs with a bank in the FD, there might be certain interest. For example, after 5 years, there was 50,000 in the form of this. Again, it will be again a liability. So these are referred to as other demand and time liabilities. If you are having 5 lakhs in your saving account, there will also be accrued interest on this account, might be 10,000 rupees, right? So this you have also to take into account while you are calculating the total liability. So ODTL are all such accrued interest on deposits, bills paid, and unpaid dividends, all those suspense accounts, right? So net demand and time liability becomes, It shows the difference between the sum of demand and time liabilities. This we have discussed, of a bank, and the deposits in the form of assets yes. Now, this was what we discussed was demand and time liability. Demand and time liability. Now we want to know what is net demand and time liability. Net means, as I discussed in the past, I was talking one thing to you that there might be a situation that a bank A has given, uh, for example, SBI has given 10 crores rupees to PNB. That means if, and total demand and time liability on SBI is, if we calculate this and this, it comes out to be 500 crores. Now, this 10 crore becomes the asset of the SBI, right? As per the definition, it will no more be the liability. So if you want to calculate the net demand and time liability, then you have to subtract this 10 crore from this 500 crores to calculate, to know the net demand and time liability. It will come out to be 490 crores. So this is basically, this 490 is nothing but net demand and time liability of the bank. And it is for the individual bank, right? So bank's NDTL is demand and time liabilities. That means all the deposits, right, of the bank, along with other demand and time liabilities, interest and all those things. This is ODTL minus deposits with other bank. That is the situation of 10 crore. Right? So this is basically NDTL. Is it clear? Anybody who is not clear with this concept? Now, many questions are coming from these concepts. Variable reserve ratio. Variable reserve ratio, as the term says, that there are certain ratios. These are basically ratios. Ratios means these are calculated in reference to something, and the reference is NDTL. Whenever I will say that, for example, this cash reserve ratio is 5%, for example, I say that means 5% of what? 5% of NDTL. So variable reserve ratios are nothing but this amount of money, this amount of NDTL is put in the form of reserves. And there are two type of reserves which are technically said to be: first, cash reserve ratio, popularly known as CRR, and the other is SLR, statutory liquidity ratio. Now, as the name suggests, cash reserve ratio, that means the bank has to keep some percentage of NDTL in the form of cash. First thing, average daily balance that a bank is required to maintain with the Reserve Bank of India as a share of such percentage of its NDTL. Right? First thing, certain percentage of NDTL is to be kept aside in the form of, second is, it is to be kept in the form of cash. This is very important. It should be kept in the form of cash. Secondly, it is to be kept with Reserve Bank of India. Third thing, this money is lying idle with Reserve Bank of India. Reserve Bank of India is not giving a single penny in the form of interest to the bank. It is lying idle with Reserve Bank of India. So cash reserve ratio is a certain amount of NDTL is put in the form of reserves, and it is put in the form of cash, and this money is to be kept with Reserve Bank of India, and this money is lying idle with Reserve Bank of India. This rate of CRR is announced from time to time, and it remains in the range of 3 to 4%. Right? Is it clear? Now coming to its analytical part, which remains the focus of UPSC. Directly they can ask you that cash reserve ratio, whether this money is lying idle. They will give you n number of options, right? Many times they will ask the implication of changing CRR. Now, for example, Reserve Bank of India is having, the bank SBI is having 100 rupees as NDTL, right? Assume it. And CRR is now 3%, assume. Now in the first case, I am saying that CRR is increased. That means CRR becomes 4, 3 to 4. Now we have to analyze its implication. Implication means simply we have to analyze in terms of liquidity, nothing else. You are supposed to analyze the impact of the policy with reference to the liquidity, right? Now, when C, and I am assuming every other thing to be constant, every other parameter is constant in the economy. So if it is having 100 rupees, CRR is 3%, that means 97 rupees will be available with State Bank of India, with which it can execute its other functions. That means we assume that this 97 rupee was available for the bank. What bank will give with the money it is having? It will give it in the form of loans, right? Naturally, it will give in the form of the loans. That means it was having 97 rupees, which can be given in the form of loan, first case. In the second case, where the CRR was increased to 4%, SBI was having 100 minus 4, that is 96 rupees with herself, which can be given in the form of loans. That means what is the impact upon the liquidity of the bank? The liquidity decreased from 97 to 96. This is how UPSC asks the questions. But CRR is increased. What will be the impact upon liquidity? They can manipulate it, right? Language can be manipulated. Wait, what you are asking? Sorry, I'll take your question in the last because I have to switch it over to this. So if we reverse this situation, that means initially it was 4% and it was reduced to 3%. That means your liquidity with the banks increased. So if CRR is increased, then liquidity with banks is decreased. Then second thing is SLR, statutory liquidity ratio, right? Statutory liquidity ratio is again, it's the ratio with respect to NDTL, first thing. Second thing, in the CRR, we were putting money aside in the form of cash in the case of CRR. Now it is saying that you have to keep certain amount of money, and that percentage is in the range of 20 to 25. Under SLR, the RBI says that you have to keep, for example, SBI was having 100 rupees with it, keeping everything constant. It says that out of this 100 rupees, you have to put 20 rupees invested. I am using the term invested in liquid assets, and these assets are predefined by the Reserve Bank of India. These assets are gold, government securities, and you can also put it in the form of cash. But this is the least preferred mode of reserve under SLR, because what bank will do with the cash? If the bank is putting money invested in the government securities, they will be having, they will have interest on it, right? So most of the times, this 20 rupees, the banks are investing in government securities and gold. So that means statutory liquidity ratio is nothing but it is part of NDTL, which is to be kept invested in the government securities, gold and cash. First thing. Now see its implication. In the first case, again take the that situation, 100 rupees with SBI. Okay, let me, the question Vaishnavi is asking, even the money in CRR remains same even during economic crisis in the country. CRR remains same even during economic crisis in the country. See, I didn't get your question, but whatever I have understood from your question, CRR is the domain of RBI, and depending upon the situation, they take the call. I'll explain that there were some exceptional times during the time of demonetization. At that time, there were certain changes in the economy that I'll explain when it later on when the things will come. Secondly, all these parameters, the most of the time, the tool of the monetary policy which is used by the Reserve Bank of India is basically repo rate, which I'll be discussing tomorrow. Right? These CRR, SLR are least touched by the Reserve Bank of India. Once in a while, once in a year, once in 2 years, once in 3 years. So whenever you see the monetary policy announcement by the Reserve Bank of India bi-monthly, you will see that everybody is talking about repo rate, the most common word you might have heard in the newspapers. Reserve Bank of India hardly touched these SLR, CRR. They are once in a while. Right? They are announced once in 2 years, 3 years, 1 year, right? They are not touched on a regular basis. Reserve Bank of India frequently tinkers only the repo rate, right? That comes under liquidity adjustment facility that we'll discuss. So the many times you will find that the term used for these repo rate and reverse repo rate, they are key interest rates. The term is used key interest rate because it is the repo rate and reverse repo rate which is ultimately defining the liquidity in the economy. Right? So have an we will see the SLR implication. The situation was State Bank of India was having rupees 100, and in the first case SLR was 20. That means 80 rupees were available to be given in the form of loans. In the second case, SLR increased to 25. That means the loan capacity of SBI becomes 75. That means liquidity with banks reduce. If we go otherwise, initially we take it 25 and we reduce it to 20, then the liquidity increase from 75 to 80. Right? So as of now, what we have observed, if CRR and SLR are increased, then liquidity with banks is decreased. If CRR and SLR are decreased, then liquidity with banks is increased. Again, I am telling you, though these are thumb rules, I have tried certain thumb rules, but whenever you are attempting in the UPSC, please forget these thumb rules and try to analyze a situation which is given in the exam, right? This thing. Now, somebody is asking about government security. See, government security is nothing but government security is a piece of paper. It's like a, for example, if you see the note, rupee currency, there is It is saying that I guarantee, the RBI is giving the guarantee on the note of paper, on the currency, that if you present that currency, for example, the piece of paper is having 2000 on it, 2000 rupee. This piece of paper is having the value of 2000 rupees because the RBI is guaranteeing it. It is having the fiat of the government, fiat of the RBI. The term is, actual word is fiat or legal tender. And we'll discuss in money supply. The term is legal tender or the fiat money because it is having the backing of the sovereign, right? So government security is nothing but, for example, the government security is of rupees 1 lakh. This piece of paper is said to be the government security because it is backed by government of India. The government of India says that I will pay you 8% of money if you are giving me loan, if you give me money in the for, if you're lending me the money, right? And after maturity of this government security, this is having certain maturity. For example, it will having maturity of 1 year. So it will say that there will be an agreement arrangement between the bank and the government of India, that after 1 year I will be paying you 8 rupees per 100 in lieu of this borrowing. So this is how this government security works, right? And whatever, again I am repeating that whatever transaction is taking place in the economy, the government securities are exchanged. Government securities are exchanged, and this thing in SLR, the banks are having government securities as their investment. These government securities are used by the banks to be exchanged with either Reserve Bank of India or with any other bank. Again and again, I am telling you that government securities are being exchanged. Now the question will be, from where these government security will be there with the bank? These government securities are actually the government securities bank has invested in SLR. Right now, it will be clear to you that from where these government securities are coming and what bank is doing with these government securities. See, everything is interrelated. That's what I'm saying. Try to know the fundamentals. If you are clear with the fundamentals, things are clear to you at the very first instance, you will be in a better position to correlate the things, right? So let me check the questions. Any query, right? So I think it's too much for today.